everybody.
Yeah.
Finally, after many months, many moons, we're finally doing a live stream again. Michael and I did one. Michael down below from Exploring Tolkien, our podcast. We did one a while back because Rings of Power was so easy to talk about. And there were so many things that kept us talking for way too long about, well, my particular issues with it. But today I'm excited because we've got more than just me and Michael. We've got plenty of other really smart, really intelligent, and really insightful people that we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. We're going to talk about for Return of the King back in theaters. We're going to talk about new Middle-earth movies. We're going to talk about Frodo. We're even going to talk about like Steven Spielberg and his thoughts about changing films now, which is what seems to be the zeitgeist, and hopefully that won't change. But first, let me introduce everybody. Here to my right on the screen, I guess it is. That's Steve Babb from Glasshammer. I interviewed Steve last year. I think it was like November, I want to say. And
not too long ago.
Yeah, we met a long time ago. But Steve, you are the bassist and I guess lead songwriter. I don't know exactly all your things, but for Glasshammer. And first, let me say, Glasshammer 20 years ago wrote the Middle-earth album, which is well worth your while. So if you go to glasshammer.com and check it out, that is like as if a band was playing at the Prancing Pony. What would that sound like? So anyway, so Steve, welcome. Good to have you.
Thank you very much.
And
good to be here.
More to come. John, who I'm sure a lot of you know from, or Trent. I don't know. We have 3 Johns here, or Jonathans, and that's going to be a problem. So I'm going to try and call you Trent from now on. But Trent here from Bounding Into Comics, the editor-in-chief, the head honcho, the guy who makes everything happen there. And we talked a while back too, so it's good to have you here too to talk about.
It's glad to be back. Always fun to talk with you guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Like, I'm surprised everybody agreed to talk to me again. So I guess that's a good thing. I guess I'm doing better than I thought. And down below me is John Carswell from the Tolkien Road podcast, who clearly knows more about Tolkien than I do when I listen to him. So definitely go check out tolkienroad.com and listen to John's podcast. He does a great job diving into all those things. And I'm sorry, John, because I missed, because of my sick children, we were going to go see Return of the King together with our wives. And all 4 of my kids got sick in succession, and all of them missed school over the span of 2 weeks. It was the worst thing ever. So I wasn't able to go see Return of the King with you.
Well, your loss was my great benefit because you paid for all. I tried to pay you back, but you're like, it's cool. So that was really cool. I really appreciate it, man. Jonathan. Very generous.
Well, I wasn't fishing for anything, but I was just like, well, I don't want to. It was. I already said I was going to take you guys out, you and your wife, and then I'm like, oh, I can't go. You just go, and then we'll meet up for lunch, and you can pay for that. We'll do that. Well, and then Michael, everybody knows Michael. Forget him. So,
Michael, who is really excited for this podcast, because for anyone listening live, they don't get to miss everything that Michael says. No edits from Jonathan in real time. So there's that going for me.
I don't edit that much of you out. Just the really boring parts of the podcast. No,
it's like 80%.
I'm joking. Well, I wanted to start talking about like the one thing that I wasn't able to do, which was Return of the King back in theaters. And I think, you did, John Carswell, and Michael, you did. Did Steve or Trent, were you able to go and see?
Played one day here.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, I wanted to go see it, but I mean, I haven't been able to. I was actually on a trip down to North Carolina looking at potential homes. So maybe moving down there.
That seems important.
Really?
Yeah. In my imaginings, though, it held up.
Did it hold up? Michael, John, did it hold up after these many years? Did Gollum still look good?
Well, I took a whole, as is my wont, I took a whole swath of people with me. Small people, and they had a variety of reactions afterwards. So I can fire through them, but I want to hear what John has to say. But I had never seen the extended edition in theaters. I have the extended edition,
cool.
So I had never seen it in the extended edition in theaters. So that was fantastic. And to all the haters out there who think that movie is too long, I think that's ridiculous. That movie is all 4 hours and 17 minutes or whatever of it was fabulous. The ending, which was it's like 25 minutes.
Which ending? Which of the 6 endings that we?
Everything after the destruction of the ring. 24 minutes after the destruction of the ring.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So John, you saw it with your two older kids, right? Or your two high school kids, right?
Yeah,
So-
my two boys, and my wife as well, who also co-hosts, has co-hosted the podcast with me, the Tolkien Road podcast with me for a long time. Yeah, I mean, and I remember seeing it back in the theater when it first came out. Obviously, it wasn't the extended edition. I've seen the extended edition many times, own it, but I had not seen it in theater on a big screen. So I was just incredibly moved. Like, I've as many times as I've seen all of the movies, I was incredibly moved by it. And, I just remember I was just thinking to myself how just visually amazing it is. And it's just so much more accentuated seeing it on the screen like that. And I couldn't help but just juxtapose in my mind, like, this is
Oh no.
and not what
Not what we thought.
not how the Rings of Power tried to do it. I'm not enough of a technician when it comes to that kind of thing to know all of the ins and outs of why that is, but it looks, despite all of its fantasy, it looks so real. And I just,
Except for the surfing on the mammoth tusks, right?
Oh yeah.
yeah. But even still, that's still cool. Like,
It's still better than what we got in The Hobbit with Legolas.
That's right.
that's true.
Running up the falling stones was.
That's not Legolas. That's I call him Legolas, Lord of Physics in The Hobbit. He just changes into someone entirely different. But it started in The Return of the King. You're right, Mr. Trent. I agree with you, John. It not only held up, it was a much better experience in the big screen. It sold a whole weekend here, not just one day. And so, but even so, the movie theater was nearly full.
Wow, really?
At midnight on a Sunday. So that's a
Dang.
good sign. The kids loved it. There's things about the movie that like obviously as a Tolkien kind of purist, there are things that the changes that were made. And I know Jonathan, you and I are, as this year goes on, we're going to do a whole list of going through all the detailed changes of the extended edition from the books and analysis of them.
If you go to the onering.com, you can click on our complete list of film changes under just under the film changes link. And there are 300 or so in there, and we can update them, but we're going to try and do a video for each one of those. I don't know why I do this to myself, but that's what we're trying to do.
Sucker for punishment. But there are changes that, like, such as the whole, Gollum turning Frodo against Sam because of food, which I hated, still hate. There were changes like the additional screen time, sort of developing Eowyn and Aragorn's attraction, or Eowyn's attraction for Aragorn.
I just want to interrupt. Can you explain why you dislike the Gollum basically framing Sam?
Right. So it's I think what it does is it undermines the deep relationship between Frodo and Sam. And while I know Jackson tried to give the angle of, it's the ring that's edging it out, that's why it's sort of eroding away Frodo's will, it was still it still cheapens what is a incredibly deep friendship between the two, and a relationship which has been much twisted to the modern mind. There have been plenty of fan opinions about it, that it borders on homosexuality and all this stuff, which just shows that they don't have real friends. The people that are, that's obviously my opinion, but it really was a kind of cheapening moment where it's the idea that Frodo's bond with Sam would be weakened because Sam was eating the food, that Frodo needed. In the books, Frodo doesn't even actually want food most of the time. There's no real draw there. I just didn't see it as a plausible edge, and it kind of cheapened things. And it also took away one of the greatest moments that I recently reread of in the Two Towers, which is of course this, although in the movies it's the Return of the King, in the books it's the Two Towers on the stair of Cirith, when there's a moment of where Gollum nearly becomes a sympathetic character. And I'm going to talk more about Gollum with regard to the game that's coming out, but where Gollum comes back and sees Frodo and Sam asleep on the stair together, next to each other, and the love they clearly, the friendship and love that they clearly have for each other, touches him so that he seems to almost return back 500 years to the Hobbit that he was. And then Sam wakes up and sees him over them and accuses him of of sneaking, and that's where the whole they switched the placement of the sneaking lines, but in the movie. But the depth of that friendship, I think, is cheapened by the food scene. So that's my
Jackson said, I think he said that he felt like he needed a way for Sam and Frodo to be driven apart,
right,
so that he can pull them back together and make that more emotionally impactful after Shelob. And he thought Frodo was dead and all that sort of stuff. So not only, right, it's the rekindling not only of life in Frodo, but their relationship is back after that. So
right.
Yeah.
Right, but there are plenty of other changes, like the depth of like the extra screen time with Éowyn and Aragorn, and the whole time in Medicel, which never happens in the books, where Pippin looks in the Palantir in the Golden Hall instead of on the road back from Isengard. That I actually liked. I saw what he's doing, because you have to give a reason for why Éowyn is attracted to Aragorn, and Tolkien doesn't give a lot of time to that particular element. And visually, I could see why, and I enjoyed it. I didn't. There wasn't, and then of course there was just so much else in the movie. It holds up visually too. All my kids were saying like how much better it looks than things that came out in the last 12 months. The CGI is worse than, Gollum. Andy Serkis is of course a genius, but
I think
it's
so.
just. Yeah.
Let's talk about that, because I think like are movies looking too much like video games at this point? Is that why we disbelieve it? Like that to me is the simple way of putting it, but maybe there's a better way.
That started for me with The Hobbit.
Yeah. Yeah,
it really did. When the orcs looked so good, I thought, in Peter Jackson's or in the Lord of the Rings films, and suddenly I think it was Thorin's battle in front of the mountain, the first one. It was a flashback, I guess.
Yeah, it looks
when we
really
meet
fake.
Bolg, I guess it looked like like we'd switched to a trailer for a video game.
Didn't The Hobbit begin? Wasn't there a new frame rate technology that they began to use with The Hobbit? I was watching,
they did 48 frames a second. I saw it like that, and it drove me bananas. I hated it.
We've been on kind of a kick of watching some older movies, and it's weird to say Stand By Me is an older movie, like being mid 80s, but
dude, you're old.
Yeah, right.
I'm with you.
But like, even going back and watching that, I was just like, there's something almost dreamlike when you're watching this, and it's and a hypnotic element that takes you out of your everyday life, and part of it's just a well-made movie, good storytelling. But also I do think there's I feel like that's something similar going on with Return of the King, maybe and Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies, as opposed to what has come later. And so I even like just technical aspects of why things it is better. Is this higher definition, higher frame rate really going to lead to
does
more
8K make
art?
It feel more realistic even?
It's an excellent point. I wonder, can anyone think of a movie in the last 20 years that was made with the high frame rate, that has that crispness, that was excellent? Like, is there an imaginative movie? Because I think you're onto something, John Carswell, with the sort of the dreamlike quality. I think there's something about our imagination that doesn't have that crispness to it, so it can bring a kind of mystery, a little bit of magic to the memory of it. But I can't think of a movie that's in high def that I was like, yeah, that was awesome. I just wish I'm glad it wasn't in the earlier mode of movie making. I don't know if anyone else could think of a movie.
I think it has more. I think what you guys are kind of getting on, maybe not just the high def stuff, just the digital versus film. I know I had been watching before they pulled it off. We've been watching a lot of The Sound of Music, because my daughter's just like really into a lot of the music stuff. And there's just something kind of about the grainy nature of the film where it kind of gives that like realism to what it is, because it's almost like you can live in that world. That world, it's there, it's alive. Whereas like when you're talking about like these very like clear pictures, it does look it is kind of off-putting, and kind of is like, well, this is clearly not real. It looks fake, and kind of takes you out of it already.
Yeah, and even with Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson, like they had a ton of models that they used still, like the Barad-dûr. They created a 15, 20 foot, I can't remember how tall it was, a statue or a model of Barad-dûr, and used that as the film models. And so even then, I think what you get is you get realism because it is real, but two, you have to put a camera in a place that could actually be somewhere. Whereas if you do it all digital, you have these fly-throughs of cameras that feel unrealistic, like it's impossible. Like I first felt that. I felt that at Revenge of the Sith. I don't remember in the very beginning where you had this camera that would follow Anakin and Obi-Wan as they were flying through the battle in the very beginning of the movie, and it was very much like swooping through everything. It just was jarring to me because it didn't feel as real as like the speeder bike chase or even the Death Star trench run from the original Star Wars, where it was fast cuts, it was single shots, you could follow it well, but this was this, we set up a drone behind you, and we have a tractor beam from behind the ship, and it's just following you as fast as it can. And just that kind of stuff just pulls me right out of it. And I love the realism that you get in actual films that were made, 20 years ago or more. But nowadays everything feels like a video game to me. Maybe.
What about Top Gun Maverick? Did you see that?
That's a good point. I did.
So that's probably the one that kind of stands out. Like I don't know. It's hard for me to really kind of say that took me out because I think they did so many practical stunts.
They did.
Didn't rely a lot on like extra graphics and stuff like that. They were in those planes. They were vomiting in the planes after because they were pulling the high G's and everything. So, and that
practical effects versus special effects.
And then even the most recent Mission Impossible with Henry Cavill, I feel like kind of puts you in that too. But those aren't like high fantasy or space operas or anything like that, where you're usually relying on a lot of that digital effects.
Yeah. What's the filmmaker? He's doing did the Interstellar.
Oh yeah,
practical effects for that. Yeah.
Is that Christopher Nolan? Is that?
Yeah, Christopher Nolan. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think he's doing he's doing a movie about the bomb.
Oppenheimer,
and apparently Oppenheimer.
That looks
apparently there's a real bomb.
interesting.
I don't know. The explosion is real.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. He had them actually create a real explosion. That's right.
Yep.
I read about that.
Yeah.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I gotta go look.
But I think he's using. He's obviously it's not like a nuclear detonation. I think it's like more of a a practical bomb or whatever.
Yeah.
Not super familiar with any of that stuff, but
that set though for Interstellar. I mean, they built a set for I can't remember what they called this black hole phenomenon they went into, where he could see the library or the bookshelf and all over many dimensions. It's a real set. Scientists brought in and so he's got a really good look to his films.
Yeah, I don't know that it's impossible now to make like the same, to make great film. I just think like what Jackson accomplished is pretty amazing with those first three films. I mean, he deserved that Academy Award, all of those Academy Awards, undoubtedly, because it was a monumental achievement. And I look at him and I think, like, for somebody like to adapt a work of, that's just such a that comes from a mind like Tolkien's, where it was such an utterly unique creative vision, just completely idiosyncratic creative vision. It takes somebody just like him in the other medium to accomplish that. And not saying that Jackson is just like him, maybe ideologically, but just like him in the sense of being like a really eccentric creative with his own vision, but also having the practical ability to like make these things happen. And so, that when we reviewed Rings of Power, like my analysis of kind of big picture analysis of all of the issues there was simply like, you're trying to do this thing by corporate committee, right? And, that's not going to work. Like you can't do justice to what Tolkien gave us that way. Yeah. That's just not going to happen. It's just going to be bland corporate mediocrity. And that's really what we got.
Yeah. Hey, everybody below me is the Middle Earth Mixer. Welcome.
Welcome.
there are more responsibilities more important than this. I can't imagine what that would be. However, so we're talking a little bit about if Return of the King holds up. Did you see it in theaters recently when it came back out?
Yeah, I did, and it was kind of an awful experience. I actually not the movie, but my wife's pregnant. I shared that with you, and we go up there, and I thought it would be good. I got seats kind of close to the front, and
that's always a mistake.
Yeah, and for some reason, I had just assumed, logically that the theater would use the 4K version. And it not only was it not the 4K version, so it didn't look updated, which is fine. I'll still watch the movie. However, they were, because it was in a theater, they had zoomed up on everybody's face. So I'm basically watching just like face shots of Gandalf, Theoden, and Aragorn for the first 20 minutes. And my wife's pregnant, so I'm not going to make her sit uncomfortably up at the front the whole time. So we just ended up leaving, and we watched the rest of it on 4K at my house.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, so Mixer missed the first part of this discussion. It would have been fun because I'm anti 4K. I like the more dreamlike version.
No. I think you're anti like too high resolution without, and you can do 4K and still make it look good.
That's true. But
yeah, it's the too high resolution. We were talking a little bit about that. I mean, I think one of the things to bring up is like changing film. So we have the extended editions. And I don't know if you guys know, my brother texted me last night at like 2 a.m. because he's in California and I'm in here, and I'm like, dude, that's a little late. Anyway, but he told me, hey, Return of the Jedi is back in theaters this week because it's its 40th anniversary. And I was like, oh, what? Weekend. Oh man, now I got to go take time to find that. But I want to go see that in theaters. I think that was the second or third movie I ever saw in a theater. But we have changes that are always made to these movies, and now we have Steven Spielberg saying that he hates the idea of updating movies. And so, I mean, thankfully we have some movies like Back to the Future and The Godfather, ones that have never really been touched, other than maybe to bring it into a higher quality from the film stock, whatever. But it's not like they're adding Jabba the Hutt into Star Wars or I don't remember.
I hate that scene so much.
He was in Star Wars.
So bad.
Originally, he just wasn't a slug.
Yeah, he was just a big guy in a furry suit.
Yeah,
not furry, not in that sense. Just suit made out of some fur.
That whole it makes Jabba look so small, and then he steps on him, which is like the worst part.
Yeah, that was. I have to admit, I recently. Actually, it's the latest thing I've hate watched. I actually went back to that clip just to remind myself of how much I hate that clip.
It's awful.
Yeah. And then the reference from Spielberg, I think that you're making the connection, Jonathan, is obviously the zeitgeist of the era right now with the Rings of Power and everything else is, revising this world for the modern audience. And so Spielberg is specifically distancing himself from that idea and admitting his own fault in doing so when he infamously made some changes to his early aughts version of E.T.
Yeah, I never saw that version of E.T. and I will have to make an effort to find the version with it because heck, my kids love guns, so why not more guns? Although when we did go to South Dakota this year, what did my boys want? Because we said they can get one gift. They wanted a realistic looking Western cap gun that actually you could put the caps in.
Oh, I have one of those. Those are awesome.
Yeah, see,
we do too. Yeah,
caps. Yeah. Those guys, you stick them in there and they make the sound. And for my 13-year-old, my 6-year-old, they both were nonstop with that. It was awesome. Anyway, but yeah, so he took the guns out, right? And then he said, "What's interesting is I think." And this is what I don't know if you guys follow Hollywood in Toto, who also has a great, more thoughtful site about entertainment and Hollywood. He points out that Spielberg's line
more thoughtful.
Sorry, how about this?
Ouch.
He, oh man, I just backed myself into a really horrible corner.
No, I like Christian Toto too. Just give me.
I was expecting Trent to just
he took
this
line. He doesn't give us. He didn't give us all the everything surrounding the statement. He just said what he thought about the statement was that the interesting word that Spielberg used is that we shouldn't force people to do that anymore. And that's what really where we are, is that we're being forced to watch it in the ways that they want us to watch these films because they're problematic. They were created at a time where we weren't as enlightened those 20 years ago as we are today. But yeah, I mean, do we see, like, are we going to see like the Warner Brothers movies that are coming up, right? Are they going to take this, right? So here's the thing that drives me crazy, right? Star Wars. The Force is female. That was the shirt that Kathleen Kennedy wore when she took over Star Wars. And what do we see now in Star Wars? We see no strong male characters. They for lack of a better term, they neuter the men, right? Even the Mandalorian in the recent series, as far as I can tell. Boba Fett was horrible, what they did with him. Rey is a strong one. Right, and so everything is now. It has to be. You can't have women be saved by anything. Even the new Little Mermaid, right? In the original, you have I can't remember the boy's name, but Eric. Yeah, he pirates it. Yeah, right. He spears Ursula with the ship, and in this new one, I don't know how they're doing it, but I know they're making Ariel do it herself. She's going to be saving herself. So nobody can be saved unless
there's like there's a book adaptation that shows her piloting the ship into Ursula, who's now like looking like, instead of like looking ferocious and fearsome, she's looking like distraught and like kind of fearful.
Yeah. So do you think?
I think they should have gone full like a classic version of the original version of the Little Mermaid, the actual story where it's like the most depressing ending ever.
It's a terrible fairy tale, by the way. It is depressing.
I think something to point out about that, though, is that you mentioned they make the guys essentially worthless is what they did to Finn's character. He was originally supposed to be, I think, the Jedi of the series, right? Or at least him and Rey were supposed to be Jedis together. And people were really excited about his character, particularly people who care about diversity. And then they basically ended up just scrapping that for reasons that only Disney knows. And I think that they ended up shooting themselves in the foot with their own diversity agenda. They took this character that maybe could have been great, a stormtrooper becoming a Jedi, who knows? And they did away with it for one reason or another.
Yeah. Well, that whole trilogy, they had no idea what they were doing from the get-go either. There was no plan. They went from movie to movie without a plot. They were just...
The plan was soft reboot and remake Star Wars.
Reimagine. Yeah. Turn off everything that happened in the past and we're just going to go forward. And so now they're making another... Is it another trilogy of Rey movies or is it just one?
So it's just one right now.
Oh, thank the Lord.
If it'll ever be made.
So what are you saying? So will Warner Brothers... So here's the question. With Warner Brothers, with Lord of the Rings and Tolkien and what they have the rights to, which is everything except essentially, again, the Silmarillion, because they have the appendices, but in film form rather than in TV form, if I understand it right. Correct me, anybody who knows better than me if I'm wrong.
They don't have the Silmarillion?
They do not. They still only have the appendices. I'm pretty sure. I don't think the Silmarillion.
Are you talking about Amazon?
I'm talking about Warner Brothers. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it's like I think Warner Brothers have the film rights to Lord of the Rings, and then Amazon has the TV rights. Is that?
I think Amazon has the TV rights to the books. At least according to their own interviews, they have the TV rights to the books and the appendices. But I think Warner Brothers has everything. With because they cut a new deal. They cut a new deal when they announced the films.
Wait, I don't think they have the Silmarillion.
Yeah, I don't think the Silmarillion's ever been sold.
Yeah,
it's Lord of the Rings proper, and then the appendices. I think. I don't think that they have the Tolkien estate is definitely pearl clutched with the Silmarillion for good reason.
Yeah. if they stick with that, depending on who's in charge of that.
Hey guys, I gotta drop. You guys are getting like right to the thing I want to talk about too. So this kind of stinks, but hopefully I'll be back soon.
All right.
See you, John.
Hopefully see you in a few. But anyway, so regardless, so whatever they end up doing, do you think people are starting to learn the lesson? Like, don't reimagine what people already love, or do you think we're still going to go down this path? Is it going to take another big old failure like that, or where you see if The Force Awakens was huge, and then you get to Solo and Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian, where people just don't care anymore, right? They've lost any passion. There's no fans propping it up anymore.
Did anybody watch Picard season 3?
I did.
Got any Trek fans? Opinions on that, because I'm a fan and I loved it. I skipped the second season. I just didn't have the heart and was told not to watch it. Very confused and let down by the first season. And then I started reading some things about the third season, and I kept waiting to be let down.
Was that the one that Stacey Abrams was in, the former governor of Georgia?
No, that was Discovery.
That was Discovery. Yeah.
She was the president of Earth at that point. She had risen up the ranks over the next 2,500 years or however long.
More than just Georgia.
Yeah, this was done by a fan.
It was, yeah, Terry
super fan.
Metalis, right?
Yeah.
And he worked on, I think he was like an intern. He was like a lower level guy on the end of Next Generation or something like that long ago.
And I mean, just as a fanboy myself, I mean, I just about had to get the Kleenex out by the last episode. It hit all the right spots, and it just didn't have any of that new thought to it at all. It just was what it needed to be, and it wasn't anything more. Maybe that's a sign of. I'm just saying, maybe that's a sign of things to come.
I hope so.
Well, I hope so too. Is it Metalis? What is his last name?
Terry Metalis, I believe.
Metalis. So I'm with you, Steve. I started watching the first season, and then I took my toys and went home because I was so mad. Yeah. And then someone told me this third season. I skipped the second. Someone told me the third season was good, so I tried it out. I love the third season. I think actually Star Trek season 3 is going to be the litmus test, because just to see whether they're paying attention or not. Yeah. I think there's a story that's being told inside of media, and John Trent can give you a better finger on the pulse than I can. But there's a story being told that if you look at how many YouTube videos and previews, trailers are ratioed. Now there's a story being told that just a lot of hateful former fanboys that are just tanking, toxic masculine folks that are just tanking these ratings, and they don't really mean anything when the Rotten Tomatoes score is so low, etc. The question for me is going to be next year or the end of this year, as we start seeing the stuff that gets produced as a following up on the last 12 months of production. Do we see any shifts? Do we see anyone recognizing something, especially with Star Trek? Because it's been said that was such a bright spot in an otherwise dark universe now, in my mind. So I'm holding my breath.
Well, I mean, maybe it's good timing then for Warner Brothers making these decisions, and also there's the War of the Rohirrim. I don't know. I guess they're pretty far along with that. I haven't really followed it much because I've talked before about how I just don't care about it.
Comes out next year.
Comes out, so they're really close. Like they're
I think they're gonna. I think if you look at the tweet in the private chat, he says that they're gonna show it off at Annecy, which is this huge French animation film festival in June this year.
I mean,
we'll probably get a trailer then.
How much of a role will isn't Eowyn back in this one? Isn't Miranda
She's
Otto
narrating
it?
Yeah.
I mean, if they change the characters,
I'm excited.
Right, yeah, I mean, I hope it's good. I mean, the story of Helm Hammerhand is pretty amazing. But if they start throwing in, his wife or mistress or whatever they end up doing, and you're like, wait a minute. So she's the neck that turns the head now. That's going to start disappointing me. But here's the funny thing. This is what we were talking about right before we started the live stream too, is Tolkien has so many good, strong characters that are female, that are all written in the Silmarillion already. And then they feel like they have to take the stories that were in that that aren't like female centric, like Beren and Luthien, or even, you could even go all the way into Turin and, Elwing and Arundel, right? So all those stories are there, and at Haleth, if you go even further back, the people of Haleth, how she held her people together. Anyway, all this sort of stuff. But are they going to, and I think Corey in our chat, she asks us, what does he mean by lenses being forced to peer through? Are we being forced to peer through the lens of patriarchy that says you can't have a male be in charge of a people anymore, or to be the one who actually wins the day in the end? That doesn't happen. Will Warner Brothers learn that lesson? Will we see that in the War of the Rohirrim? I sure hope not.
I'm pretty cynical about the whole thing. I've heard a lot of people, of course I'm hopeful. I've heard a lot of people who have spread this narrative like, yes, it's finally subsiding. The agenda is finally subsiding. We can come up with creative stories again. And I don't subscribe to that at all. I think with
Welcome to the Black Pill.
I was going to say you and
John's
John
been quiet because he's like, you guys are all just dumb. You don't know what you're
Well, I think with the current
too much.
Yeah, I think with the current regime, people feel safe actually telling good stories again because they don't necessarily have to hit a checklist because there's less of that political attention on every single thing that gets dropped. However, I still don't think that that's going away. I think as soon as the pendulum swings and the regime changes, we're going to have more garbage. We still have garbage. I mean, if you look at the most recent, I think it was the I didn't watch it. I refused to watch it. It was the Witcher prequel mini series that came out. I didn't
watch it either.
I saw trailers and it was absolutely horrendous looking. Right. Like I didn't even want to waste my time watching it. But I think that stuff is going to continue to come out, and I think it's gone a little bit more dormant. The agenda to look at everything under a certain political microscope, that goes to sleep. It doesn't go away completely, and it'll wake up again as soon as somebody else gets into the White House. Or at least that's my personal opinion.
Well, to share in the black pill a little bit, I don't think you can escape from the fact that all of these productions are in fact a product of the imaginations of the people in charge, and we have a culture which has shifted dramatically since the time. Yeah. And so the culture drives towards certain things, and I agree with you, Mixer. It's the money and the whitewash over it. No racial overtones intended. the whitewash over it is the whole politically correct, as we used to say in the 80s, and now woke veneer that's supposed to make it more palatable, although there's been some backlash. But ultimately, I don't see this crop of directors producing, not most of them. I don't see most of them producing much of anything different, because that's who they are. I think that's who they've been. That's how they've grown up. There's something in their souls that actually drives what they do.
Back to the culture, is it the culture, or is it the shaping of the culture? Is it the forcing of some new vision of culture? Because a great story, and what makes a great story, hasn't changed in millennia.
I think it's a little bit of both, but I'm glad that Michael brings it up that these people can't write anything other than what they are, and that's something that I preach all the time on our Black Pill stream on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. But Tolkien talks about
I love that.
Yeah, we black pill you on entertainment.
Hey, Jonathan, can you move John Trent down to Mixer's level? So I want to be a little higher up now. Just kidding.
But Tolkien talks about this in the letters when he's asked about the work being Catholic, and he's like, "Of course I'm Catholic, so it's going to be in my work as well." And I think you see that reflected in what these people made. Their whole world vision, their ideology is injected into everything that they make, and that's why it sucks, because their view of the world sucks.
Yeah, Tolkien's it's all about worldview. It's all about that, and if you can't grasp that, then you really can't touch it.
And one of the things that Tolkien said in one of his, sorry, go ahead, Michael.
No, go.
I was just going to say, one of the things that Tolkien said when he was discussing all the people who gave his book negative reviews, and it's, again, behind the Bible, it's the highest sold book of the last century. And when he was asked about those criticisms, he was like, well, those people don't particularly like the way I write, and I don't really particularly like the stories that they tell either. And the people that he was talking about are now in control of everything.
Yeah.
So yeah. It's an unfortunate reality of today.
So sad. We brought up in our podcast a while back. We brought up, and we're actually doing this in our. We have our Discord channel members. If you go to theonerego.com/members, you can become a member there. And we have a Discord channel, and we're going to be going reading through. And this is as Michael said, I am embracing the hoke. I think it's the really hokey version of the book Taliesin by Stephen R. Lawhead, which the rights were bought by the Daily Wire, which is interesting because it's going to be like a fantasy story told but with a smaller budget, but by a media company that's still trying to make a mark. So maybe the new good things have to come out of smaller places, and hopefully all the money spent on all these things is just going to eventually run out. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know that it runs out, but I do think that cultures do change over time, for better and for worse. All the artistic products of every culture. I mean, my background's in history, so that's where my proclivities lie.
Yeah.
Looking at different cultures over history, they only can produce I mean, the production of each culture is a reflection of the spirit of that culture and the intellectual traditions and the literary traditions and the views, metaphysical views of the universe, etc. And so, as our culture has changed, our products have changed as well. We've become technically more proficient. Like I look at some of the shows I used to watch as a kid in the 80s, and the production value of almost any show in today's streaming world is hilariously higher. But the heart and the themes are less. And so it is. But so the culture is going to have to change before we can get another Tolkien, I think. But in the meantime, the question is, how fast can the culture change? Will it change at all? Will it just go to sleep, like Mixer's saying, and then come back with a vengeance in a few years? I don't know.
I think that we're just going to continue to have to feed our own groups, our own social circles, and that's really where the good products are going to come from. As we go on, we continue to coalesce around specific people, specific organizations. Daily Wire is a great example.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to look like. The stuff that we like, the stories that we like, maybe won't be as popular as everything else, and that's fine. We'll take it as long as it's a good story.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm doing myself. I mean, I have right here Chuck Dixon's The Siege of the Black Citadel, which is a Conan story. I've got Brian Niemeyer, who's a Catholic novelist. He has two trilogies called Combat Frame, X-Seed, and it's like a very similar. If you're Mobile Suit Gundam, it's very similar to that. But they're really good stories and they're really interesting. I mean, there's tons of people doing stuff like that, and it's just finding them and sharing them with other people.
Ease of publication is a big plus in that regard, in terms of turning that corner and creating new content.
Yeah, and distribution of marketing too, right? You're not stuck with your publisher's marketing firm either, right? You can, and nowadays, right? You want to be. You create your name before you publish, right? Before you get published by anybody with a publishing arm of any sort. So they always want to know now. So what's your social media following like before they actually commit to you at all?
Because they want you to do the work for them.
Yeah, right.
You can also just step around them now because you've got Brandon Sanderson, who made like $40 million on a Kickstarter last year.
That's right.
So yeah.
Although his co-host on his podcast gave The Rings of Power an 8 out of 10. So
well, Brandon Sanderson is he was also kind of like, he's connected with Amazon with the Wheel of Time and everything. So he was very let's say he wasn't very critical of the show. But when he was talking about it, he did make clear that there were things he didn't like, but he wasn't just kind of like trashing it, which he might actually believe. Maybe.
Well, and is the screenshot of his face when his co-host first gives it an 8 out of 10, I think tells you all you need to know. Like he clearly does not hold it in high regard. But yes, he was much more circumspect. He has business connections that he has to maintain. I understand, but but his Kickstarter was amazing. I loved it. I'm a fan of his work. He does an excellent job of world building in some cases, and he's one of the better.
This series is really good.
Did he talk much about Wheel of Time at all? All I hear is bad things. I actually haven't watched it.
It's terrible. Don't watch it.
It is really awful. But yeah, I've covered it when it came out, and he was actually doing like sharing his notes and everything and the stuff that he disagreed with, but he wasn't like being overly critical or anything like that, because obviously he's, like Michael said, he's probably not trying to really burn bridges or anything like that. But he did provide some critiques and some things that he didn't like, but he also said overall he thought the show was good. But I don't know if I don't think he's lying, but I also think he might be saying that just to not burn the bridges. Okay, there you go.
That was from the podcast. That was a little video I did a while back, like in December, and that was his reaction. Like,
that's not just sort of a, oh wow, you've had a like that's a surprising
like rating. He's holding down a little vomit, just a little bit. It's like, that's a face that you make out of disgust. Yeah, here's something Corey said in the chat, that I think the people who imagine art for the world we live in today are extremely cynical about values generally and won't be corrected by the market. At their core, they worship disruption, really. And that's true, but that's what they, like, I think she's right. That's what they've been taught in school, right? Art means questioning everything. It means not, you can't be artistic if you're following the artists that came before you. You have to think of something new. You can't write classical music if that's already been done. You can't write prog rock if that's already been done, right? You're not a real artist. You're just copying other people. And I think that so disruption, that's what's important.
Well, but I mean, obviously, I agree with Corey in the first part of it. I do think, however, of course, like you're pointing out, Jonathan, that just their value, they have a value too. And their value is that what came before can't be good. In order that I have to change it, I have to put my own stamp on it in order for it to be good. Gone are the days. Die,
kill it if you have to.
Oh no!
It's literally their motto. They put it in their movie.
It's so true.
I mean, they told us what they're doing.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Not to interrupt you there.
No.
Steve, you made a great point earlier that I love, is that like there actually is an objective way to tell a story, and stories have been objectively good or objectively bad for thousands of years, and that is something that they refuse to put into their equation for anything that gets made today.
No, I mean it's apparent. It's in the Rings of Power. There's literally no heart in it. It's right off the bat. It's basically saying Tolkien's version wasn't good enough. It was good enough for us to take and do something with. I keep seeing these quotes like Warner Brothers. Let's see. However, they call it the dazzling universe dreamed up by J.R.R. Tolkien remains largely unexplored on film.
Like jazz hands, the dazzling universe of J.R.R. Tolkien.
And I see things like, it's not been fleshed out yet. And I'm like, but it doesn't need to be. Those big wide open spaces are what your imagination fills in. That's one thing I had a problem with them, is going in and making these people, like from the Second Age, you had this kind of mythological status, I guess. Suddenly now I'm looking at them and seeing their day-to-day conversations, and I'm kind of dreading any of that. I love, and I hope the Silmarillion is left alone.
Yeah.
For that very reason.
So I'm gonna bring us back around then to your first statement about Picard. Is that, how do you think, how did something like that, was Picard season 1 and 2 so bad? Did they actually do a study of fans, and fans were like, we really don't care about illegal immigration in 2023 or whatever year they put that in, and making that the primary story for an entire season of Picard, essentially? And nobody cares about these other characters that they came up with, that they have to inject with any woke sensibilities that they possibly can. And so, but they came around and they had this guy, and I think I saw an interview with him where he was talking about how he got involved in season 2 in order to have an in to the producers, and to talk to Patrick Stewart and the other actors, to say, here's my idea, let's see if we can get this started. So he almost he slithered his way into the studio to be
couldn't believe that it was done the way it was done. I like I said, I kept waiting every episode that something weird's going to happen. It just didn't. It just delivered, and maybe somebody listened, and somebody had the wisdom to just step back and let somebody with a sense of what the fans wanted out of that show. And
I guess it kind of proves the point that it's not coming from the studios. It has to come in from the back door. It has to come in.
You're right.
Sliding under the open window.
And it's too late, I think, for Rings of Power. I think they just dug in.
I don't even follow the news on what they're doing in season 2 anymore. It's just so.
They haven't really put anything out yet.
Oh, Legolas is back. I think that's what I.
Really?
I think that's what I read.
They better not.
No, I believe
they have another. They have another.
I think he's playing his father. I think he plays his grandfather. He plays his grandfather. So the actor, Orlando Bloom, not Legolas. I should say.
Okay.
Yeah, Orlando Bloom will be back. That's
right. His grandfather's name starts with an O. I can't remember his name.
That's Orifer. Really? That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Holy cow! How did you remember Orifer? That's amazing. I was like, oh my god.
So that looks like it's an April Fool's joke from.
From the one who .net. They do that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I don't do it. Crazy. We do not do April Fool's stories because there's already too much fake crap out there.
Plus, your April Fool's story probably will end up becoming true in the next 6 months, and you have to be rescind your April Fools of your April Fools, and then it's just
people already think we're the Babylon Bee.
Yeah. That's so true. Or they think the Babylon Bee is you. It's like this whole like handshake you've got going on. Oh man. Well, I mean, there's one thing. Like the Rings of Power did lose. What did I read on your article here, John? It was 63% of the.
That's according to Kim Masters at the Hollywood Reporter.
That's it. By the end of the season, or a completion rate? So 30 of the 100% people who started, only 37% finished it.
Yeah, in the U.S.
And John, how does that stack up with other? I simply have no meter for is that any good or not?
It's really hard. I mean, the streaming numbers are just really hard to tell. I would assume that's absolutely abysmal. Only 37% of people like actually finishing the series when they start. From when they start.
When that stat came out, I was also curious. What is the average for just any show?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
objectively, 37% can't be good, but how bad is it? I don't.
And of that 37%, how many were watching like I was just to hate on it?
I know, right? Yeah, those of us who finished it here were all like, actually, I had to finish it. We didn't.
At least 10%
so like this is the only time I've really ever seen this stat, like completion rate stat. It's usually just you just see watch time every week, and you can see that the watch time that Nielsen puts out, like it's in here, it declined almost every single week. I think it had a bump maybe in like episode 6 when people started binging it or whatever, but for the most part, it was just declining every single week. And then I think the week after it finished, it just fell off the charts, which means no one was actually coming in and binging it afterwards.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see
where you can see on like Netflix, you compare stuff like that, like with the Wednesday show, it has like a longevity. So people were clearly binging it, and they were binging it for a while, and they were getting new people coming in because the numbers kept staying up because Netflix releases their stuff all at once, whereas Amazon was doing weekly.
Man, when I think about it, there are like, I give up on a lot of shows. I'll start a show and I'll be like, I don't really want to finish it. But for shows like that, I would have stopped watching the Rings of Power if I didn't feel like I had to. But like with Picard, I wanted to watch it. In fact, by the end of the season, I was like, oh, it's actually coming out today. I'm going to watch it tonight, right? I was actually excited to see how they finished it because it was a story well told with characters that we liked. And no preachiness.
None.
I mean, and Star Trek is known for preachiness, but they did it subtly, and they did it within the story, and they did it well. Whereas, everything else has to be. Where there is love, it is truly never dark, or whatever that phrase was.
Oh, geez.
Throwing the worst possible phrases. So,
and it's not all about like. I mean, usually for the most part, especially the older stuff, they were actually like seemingly decent values that they were pushing, not immorality.
Yeah, well,
at least from my brief viewing
I want to say in fairness to the Rings of Power, I expected more. I just going in, I expected to see more like woke garbage, and I didn't see that at all. The only example I could think of, which is refreshing to me because I read so much of what comes out through a political lens. And I was just pleasantly surprised that, okay, there's nothing here except for the one gentleman who screams out to a crowd before our Farazan starts speaking. He says, the elves are going to come over here and they're going to take your jobs.
Yeah.
And I'm watching that. However, I do want to say, my one last point on that, I think that was less of forced politics and more laziness on behalf of the writers, because they're trying to convey and communicate the anxiety that Numenorians should be feeling about death and about elven culture. However, it's not thoroughly fleshed out enough in the show. So they have to create little other areas of anxiety to try and get that across. So I think it was more lazy writing than anything else, but I was happy with that. I was like, all right, at least there's no woke politics. And
they had us prepared though for months to hate it for that reason, and then we hated it for a whole slew of other reasons.
Exactly. Yep. I agree with
it. Fell apart everywhere else. It's just we all. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna. So I think you kind of clarified it there. You're talking specifically political wokeness rather than, I guess, the race swaps and then the characterization of Galadriel, which I consider those like default. That is wokeness. So, you kind of clarified it with political wokeness.
I think with diversity and everything, it's not, that's going to be in anything that comes out, So that's not stuff that that's not stuff that bothers me. You know, that's any studio is going to have a diverse cast. I want the philosophical underpinnings of the show to bring honor to Tolkien. But that's what I'm mostly focused on.
To bring it back.
So you're never going to get that when they are already disrespecting the source material with the race swapping though. So
that's not something that really bothers me.
Well, I think, but it comes back.
Can you name an example though of something like that? That
what do you mean?
Had the race swapping and it stayed true to the underpinnings?
I think that it's not something, whether there's an example or not doesn't matter. It's something where it's like, okay, if a character is played by, like, has slightly darker skin or whatever than you had envisioned it, it's not going to be as big of a deal. And it's not something that you should be as angry at if the show has heart and they show up and communicate those philosophical values that we want to see in the show.
But that's... Yeah.
Well, I think it's like when they do this, right? They go into it to say like, okay, we can't have just white elves, at least in the way they do it, right? We have to have a cross section. Look at the Harfoots, where they have every single
a great example
ethnicity.
of a disaster.
Right? But you might say that's not explicitly, like they're not prosaically dictating what wokeism in their vocabulary, in their interactions, but what they're showing us is like, this was the idea. We had to have this idea in there that everything is multicultural, regardless, even if it makes absolutely zero sense. And so they're giving us the symptoms of the bigger woke disease by showing us this is how we have to do it, because it is the only good way anymore. Anything else is problematic and no longer valid when it comes to establishing
that would be my concern for diversity. To bring up, I don't know, I hate all the new Star Wars stuff that comes out. However, I did like Andor. I thought it was fun. It
was the best of the ones recently.
And a great example of that done properly is in Andor when they're showing this what's supposed to be a homogenous tribe, right, on his homeworld of Andor, I think it's called. Everybody looks the same. Yeah. And that helps ground you as a person in the story. Like if I'm watching, to go back to the Rings of Power, if I'm watching the Harfoots, who are supposed to be this wandering homogenous tribe of nomads, they should all look pretty similar. And if they don't, it's going to take me out of the story, because I'm like, exactly. How are these people related when they look completely different? So that would be my concern, is with storytelling, as long as you're grounded in the story.
Yeah, the storytelling was awful. The writing was unbelievably bad. I will take issue tremendously with the character of Galadriel, because I love the character of Galadriel. I think she is, in fact, one of the most powerful characters in Tolkien's writing, although she wasn't obviously one of the 9 walkers in the Lord of the Rings, but she and they ruined her character. Even, I know the excuse was, well, this is young Galadriel, which I don't think you understand what that means. If you're claiming that's a young Galadriel, she's already thousands of years old, and you're going to claim that in the next 1,000, all of a sudden she has a complete character, like some immature teenager growing up into an adult. Yeah, it was terrible. It was awful. We're talking about Galadriel's character, or at least we're talking about the larger issue of around Rings of Power. Mr. Carswell, as you've just joined us, yes, and our favorite Harfoots. Yes.
I think another thing that made Galadriel so unlikable too was the lack of ability to relate to the character at all, because you already have this kind of superhuman aspect to her, right? Because she has been to the Undying Land. She's touched by the light of the Valar. So she can just do things that other people may not be able to do. So there's already that aspect. But when there is never any sense of vulnerability coming from a character, it's impossible for your audience to relate to that person at all. And that's pretty much how it was until like the last episode, when she has that confrontation with Halbrand, who is Sauron, apparently.
The worst. Yeah, exactly. Halbro, as we call them throughout our podcast.
Here we go. The best scenes in the entire show. Oh my god!
Jonathan had to do this to us. Yep. So
I'm really curious.
No real vulnerability, but the writing was just unbelievably poor. It was unbelievably poor. The writers themselves, they didn't even pay attention to what they had told us from episode to episode, and the geography was all up. And what's interesting is that geography, just like ethnicity of a closed group, like you were mentioning, Mixer, geography matters in a fantasy story. You have to be able to immerse your. Can I say I really appreciate this screenshot? Thank you, Jonathan.
This is Brie Larson right here from Captain Marvel.
That's right. but they got it all wrong. They don't know how to immerse anyone in Middle Earth, and then they had this writing which was absolutely terrible, and that just ruined it all. I agree with you, Mixer. Not too many overly political moments, politically woke. But I do think that the substructure of the postmodern woke movement includes that forced inclusivity. The Harfoot tribe has to look like I'm walking down New York City streets or something like that, which is absurd. Nobody would actually think that. Nor would anyone of right mind be offended by the fact that this tribe of close knit creatures is homogeneous. Nobody would be offended by that. Nobody who matters anyway.
Yeah, but and that's not. Sorry, go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say that's not what I was referring to when I said the diversity. I think like if you're going to tell a story proper, and there's a group of people who are supposed to be close, tight knit, one culture, they should all also look the same, because you're just automatically assuming that they're very tight knit genetically. However, if the diversity was different in a sense that, this group of, let's say, Sylvan elves were spending this amount of time in the South, so their features look differently than other elves living in the North. That isn't something that I think that somebody should have a problem with. Your focus more should be on what is the message that's being given to me and, your children when you're bringing your kids to watch it. Maybe, what's the agenda here is also more what I'm focused on. Also storytelling and sticking to the lore, which, I mean, we all know that was a mess. But
so the casting is part of the agenda. I mean, they literally have quotas. Amazon has made it very public that they have the quotas, and those are part of the agendas. So, I mean, I really fail to understand that kind of critique. I think that is part of the agenda, the whole race swapping, and I think you're not going to get the philosophical underpinnings if you're already starting off with a casting agenda, because you're already starting off on the wrong foot there. Because and you said you couldn't name an example, so I haven't seen an example of a race swapping done with an agenda where they stay true to the source material.
There are times where I feel like it's like when you have, if it's a story that takes place in our world, and if the original author is involved and they're like, okay, I like the way that this person acts, I just want to put him in. Like, to me, that's less of a problem than if it was, if it's been ethnically written and you start trying to force varied ethnicities into places where it just doesn't belong. Like, if you like, I don't care that if for some reason, in Star Trek they have some character in a book that's Asian and they decide to make it Hispanic. Like, if it's the same character, to me that doesn't really bother me. Or if it's white or whatever, it doesn't bother me, because it still will make sense in that world, unless it's part of that person's character and they're celebrating like Cinco de Mayo and they look like they're from South Korea. That doesn't really work a whole lot necessarily. It could, I guess. Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe it could. Don't yell at me. Anyway. I don't know. So, okay. So
I did have what. I did have just one other question. Like, what did you make of the Galadriel literally basically going to Valinor, and then she has like the flashback to her brother, and then she jumps off the ship? Like, what did you think of it? Because that to me was like, this show it was over at that point for me.
Was there a shark in the water that she jumped over?
So for me, it was that scene for me was like Valinor was evil, and she had to like go back and she was like rejecting it. I've heard people try and explain it that she was like, oh no, she's recognizing that there's still evil in the world, and that's why she has to go back and fight it. But the way that it was juxtaposed to me and shot was more like she was touching Valinor, and Valinor was like this evil entity that she had to reject. So I just and to me that was just kind of how like I was just out of it, because I thought that was just an absolutely terrible message.
Yeah, I didn't take that away from that shot of Valinor. What I took away from their portrayal of the elves in the boat who were with her as they approached Valinor was the sort of typical ham-fisted modern way of treating people that are sort of believe in things like the pure good and such, which is, making them two-dimensional and sort of almost brainwashed. So I saw that a little bit, but I didn't see her seeing Valinor as evil. I do think she was in turmoil herself. Now, the idea that she would, of course, then decide, well, then what that means is, instead of catching it, because anyone that knows Middle Earth, of course, knows that she's going to have to go to Tola Erisea first, and so she could catch a ship back. But instead of anything like that, and she decides to jump in an ocean and swim the Atlantic, back to Middle Earth, that's just the height of stupid. It's just such lazy writing. It's so bad.
You actually lasted longer than I did, Trent. You lasted to that point. I lasted to the point where she slew the friggin' snow troll without a scratch and foot. It was in the very beginning, and I was like, "Oh man, okay."
So you didn't even make it to the show. That was in the trailer. I saw that in the trailer. I was
they all put it together in the show, and I was like, "Nope, not gonna." Yeah.
You mean after she watched the troll crush her? She calmly watched the troll crush her soldiers without lifting a finger.
To respond to John's question, I actually felt the same thing during that scene. After that scene, if you so I have a podcast, the Middle Earth Mixer. I did a review of that episode, and I remember one of the things that I said was a huge problem for me is if that ultimately throughout this season ends up being a decision that assists her. Because we all know that it is the will of the Valar, therefore the will of Iluvatar in Middle-earth, for all of the elves to be residing in Amon. It's a form of rebellion that they continue to stay in Middle-earth. So her rejection of Amon in that moment, I saw as a huge problem. And I said, she better not be rewarded for this, because that's completely against what Tolkien would have wanted. It's not even the correct story.
Yeah, although I will say, remember, it was the Valar who wanted them to come to Amon, and there were plenty like King Thingol who never even who decided to stay back, and it was their choice.
She was being exiled there,
but she that was where she was from, and she wanted to come back. This is now getting deep into this. She wanted to come back because she was exiled, right? So it's not that all the elves, I think, were meant to be in Amon, and this could be. I don't know if he actually wrote that anywhere.
So I actually disagree. I think all the elves have been called to Amon, and whether that's why when Legolas in The Return of the King, if you read the book, when he looks out over the ocean and hears the calls of the gulls, it sticks with him because all the elves at their core are actually not supposed to be in Middle Earth. So when I saw that, I was like,
they were born in Middle Earth, man. Problem. They were born in Middle Earth. They were only called because Orome was there hunting some stuff from Morgoth back in the day.
Right,
but Michael, you're muted, Michael.
You're muted.
Was it the will of Iluvatar for them to be there, or simply the Valar? Because I get your point. It's a genuine question. Like, I remember debating this, reading through the Silmarillion last time. Was it a mistake for the Valar to insist that the elves all come to Amon? I feel like
I remember there being some insinuation that it was the will of the Valar and not necessarily Iluvatar's will. But I don't think in other words, there isn't what I think we do need to be careful of is there isn't a one-to-one correlation between Iluvatar's will and the Valar's will. Even Manwë, who is closest in thought to Iluvatar, so sometimes the Valar make mistakes clearly. And Tolkien even calls it out a few times in the Silmarillion. And so it is interesting. What is clear though about the question of Galadriel and the Noldor is they did go to Valinor. They saw the light of the two trees. Their leaving, which turned into an exile under the Doom of Mandos, was in fact a punishment and the inability to come back. So I think a very powerful argument can be made that the Noldor at least belong in Amon now.
She even says that after rejecting the ring. That
so here I will read you exactly what it says in the Silmarillion, and we're probably losing like all our listeners now because but this is what after Manwë sat long and thought upon Taniquetil, and he sought the counsel of Iluvatar. He said to the Valar, "This is the counsel of Iluvatar in my heart, that we should take up again the mastery of Arda at whatsoever cost and deliver the Quendi from the shadow of Melkor." So for them, it was the delivering of the elves from the shadow of Melkor in order to draw them into the light, so to speak.
To come to Amon.
To come to Amon, yeah.
Does that mean that the Sylvan elves are
I don't know, because
Amon?
Maybe because he does say it is the counsel of Iluvatar in my heart. So Mixer's got a point.
And yet the thing is because there's no forcing with Iluvatar. So this is one of the things Tolkien harps on so much in his themes, is that the attempt to compel something that someone doesn't want to do is in fact the root of evil. And so the elves are drawn to Amon, but they aren't compelled. And so there's all the Morquendi, be they of Sindar or Sylvan or whatever.
Those are the elves that never left.
They never left Middle Earth. Interesting that you bring up Mixer on a related topic, the call in Legolas's heart of the ocean, because I see those as two different themes. We've been slow rereading the Silmarillion, and the call of the ocean is not correlated exactly with the drawback to Amon, although it sometimes comes with it. And the reason I give for that is that the elves that the Teleri that sail the ships, they often don't even dwell in Valinor. The ocean has its own call to them, that they will live on the coasts of Valinor or even on the coast of Middle Earth, and it's the ocean has its own pull and draw to them. What's the line, Jonathan? That the ocean has, of all the things in Middle Earth, the ocean
echoes of the music of the Ainur.
The clearest echoes of the music of the Ainur. And so I actually see the sea longing and the longing for the light of Valinor as sometimes related, but not necessarily the same thing.
I see your point. I think I read it as definitely a call to go west, but yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from, Michael.
This is why I love having these conversations, because it's not like absolutely 100%, but it makes me think harder about it every time we go into it.
Right.
So anyway, Galadriel, Valinor. Valinor is not evil. You're right, John, Trent. I feel like that was a stupid way, because they never established where she was really going anyway. They never established like what her vision in the beginning of, like, as Corey said again, sometimes you have to touch the darkness. Well, the ship touch the darkness to recognize up from down, or I can't remember that exact line. But right, so the things she learns in Valinor, which were like, how do you know there's darkness? Because at that point there was no darkness really yet at all, because there were the trees and Melkor really hadn't come yet and all that sort of stuff. But they didn't establish that Valinor was good, or that's even where she was necessarily like 100% going. Like, this is the place, because this giant weird tunnel or like vertical gate of light opens up, which people have called it other things, but it
kind of looks like the Eye of Sauron.
Yeah, that's right. So it just, it started poorly, it ended poorly, and it lost 2/3 of the people that were watching it. I mean, most of the people that I know who started watching it didn't finish. My brother, who's read Lord of the Rings, loved the movies, all that sort of stuff. A couple of my brothers-in-law too here, they just decided not to watch it after seeing the beginning. And most people I know who did finish watching, they're like, yeah, it's fine. Like that, which is kind of the kiss of death, because you're not aching for it. You don't really want it. You're not going to see it. You're not going to like tell people about it. There's nothing there if you're just saying, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I have 5 teenage and adult children, not to count the others, and they couldn't be bothered. Not a single one of them finished Rings of Power.
Walked off after the first episode.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. All right, so there's one other thing coming out I want to talk about, because we're going wild here, but it's the Gollum game. And have you guys seen much of it? Have you looked at the trailers at all? I could show part of it, but then I'd be like, they'd remove me.
I gotta read you a comment I saw on the trailer
of the Gollum game.
Yeah.
Okay.
The climbing, the crawling, the shadows, the rock throwing, the crawling. I can't wait to pay $70 to crawl and climb as poor Smeagol. Yeah. It didn't look good.
Yeah, you forgot about the sneaking.
What special powers? What special non-lore powers are they going to attribute to him to make the game more fun?
Jumping.
I mean, this is like, I don't know. The way I look at it, it's like Assassin's Creed Middle Earth, but without anything interesting in it. Like
maybe you get to eat like a fish in slow motion or something like that.
You have a mirror and you have to decide which character you're going to be. Is you going to be Smeagol or Gollum?
Look, I'm guys. I've been a gamer since the '80s. I love games. I've been playing Lord of the Rings online for the 16 years it's been out, and this to me, which by the way, the graphics in that trailer, they look exactly like Lord of the Rings Online. Like it's 16-year-old graphics in this game, which is terrible.
And he kind of looks terrible, honestly.
And
he looks like
Gollum. I mean,
he looks like a
he's saying a lot.
1980s horror movie that's a baby coming to kill you. That's what I think of, or something like that. Right? So,
and every single thing about this game is wrong. Like first of all, the idea of let's talk about from the principles that we're supposed to identify with Gollum. This is a creature that literally creeps into villages and eats babies out of their cradle.
He's a psychopath.
This is a psychopathic murderer, completely corrupted by the ring. Yes, Iluvatar uses him as his tool, and yes, by his and through sympathy and pity, he becomes the instrument of the destruction of the Dark Lord, ultimately. But there's nothing sympathetic about him, and except like one or two moments in Middle Earth in the Lord of the Rings, and the idea from a gameplay perspective, he's gross. He does nothing. He's pathetic and evil. Like what? Yeah. At least with Assassin's Creed, you got a lot of cool outfits. What
are we looking at here?
Hold on. This is so. Semtex in our chat. He brought up this point. Did you hear they're locking Syndron's speech in the new Gollum game behind a paywall? I guess that's an elf. But I guess there's elven voice acting. You have to pay to hear the elves, otherwise they sign to you or something. That's ridiculous.
This is the worst idea for a game I've ever.
Dude, look it up. There are tons of articles about it. About it. Oh my gosh, can you believe that? That's like, I hate being nickel and dimed on games.
Some of the outcomes of the game are supposed to be, Smeagol choices that you make versus Gollum choices that you make, and that at some point all that begins to shape the character and the events around you in the game.
But it's a fixed character too. We know what happens. There's not even the element of freedom, which is so key to good video games, which is you actually get to shape your own fate. There's no shaping of anything. It's you're going to end up in the same place.
The Mouth of Sauron in it, but he kind of looks like the Inquisitor from Star Wars, and but he's wearing this like hoodie that has a bunch of human teeth like in the end of it.
I saw that. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, there's a point where you're creating something and, you think this looks pretty good. And maybe you ask a few people and, oh yeah, that's real nice. Keep up the good work. And then at a point you have to, before you've gone too far, you have to go, wait a minute now. Is this really great? And you stop and you try something different. Oh my God. And they just didn't stop.
That's like an example.
Somebody lied. Somebody was lying to these people.
I've been asking look at that. Designer was like, this is gonna be the scariest thing ever.
But there's no turning back now. It's too late.
I've been asking simply for like an Oblivion open world Elder Scrolls style Middle Earth game for Elder Scrolls, 2 decades.
Yeah.
And all I get is LOTR Online, which I refuse to play.
well, I'm with you on the Oblivion. I've been playing Elder Scrolls as well for decades, and I would love that. I mean, this like that image right there. It just looks like Tim Burton does Lord of the Rings. I mean, it's not even. It's just bad.
Well, it's not right. It's not a tier 1 game. What do they call that when it's a top?
He's got like a poncho on.
It's not
exactly.
But it's
cultural appropriation right there.
Yeah, I'm gonna try. Hey guys, I'm gonna try and live stream it. I started setting it up here so I could actually like play it live. We'll see how that actually works out. But here's my prediction, right? And I met Michael. Maybe you'll hate me for this. I don't know. Is that it'll probably be worse than like Shadows of Mordor, Shadows of War, whatever the Lord of the Rings games that came out between Celebrimbor and that other dude who was infested with Celebrimbor. He was taken over, whatever. He was Yeah, and then
Talion.
he'd take control
Yeah,
of
I've played
orcs,
him.
and okay, if it wasn't Lord of the Rings games, it was actually kind of fun. But it was
Oh,
a
it was
game, so nobody took it as like
gameplay wise. East Shadows Mordor is.
But
is a
like
beast.
this here, it's like, what are you going to do as Gollum? Like you said, are you going to like wrap him over the head with a stone and then go invisible, or is like what? We'll see. We'll see. I don't know.
I'm going to play it.
Hope out to
If anything, just to play ironically and give commentary.
if we could
about
do
it.
multiplayer, one is Gollum, one
I
is
will watch
Smeagol,
your videos.
That would be awesome.
That'd be great. I'd love to.
Oh man.
Okay.
I will say, I think the actual like the world looks really cool though. Aside from the character designs, like some of the world screenshots do look pretty cool. At least the stuff from pre-alpha that I looked at when we covered.
I haven't seen the. Were they in the trailer or not?
This was from like 2021, so.
Oh, okay.
It's like the last time we covered it because they delayed it so long. It's been delayed like a couple times now, I think.
Yeah, I just saw the gameplay trailer and I was not impressed. But I'm a sucker for good vistas and the geography of it.
I thought it looked pretty good back in alpha, pre-alpha.
Maybe I'll play it just to have the vistas.
I think they feel like they have to make it look like Gollum from the films, but they can't make it look too much like Gollum from the films. So you get a halfway done Gollum that doesn't look anywhere near. Let's see if I can. Like this one right here, right where you get that sort of weird face. And so the vistas are easy to do because like Unreal Engine, was it 5 they're on now?
Yeah.
It's amazing what you like the realism that they can do in it. And it's not that hard because it's used, right? They used it all over in the Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett and all the new shows in order for those huge screens. So they don't have to do post-production on that sort of stuff. But I don't know how good it's going to be. It's so easy to be negative without it. I mean, I hope it's good. I hope it's enjoyable. I'm gonna pay for it, so it better be a little bit.
But what are you? Imagine this, Jonathan. Imagine it's it's as good as it could possibly get in your own mind.
Yeah.
What are you going to get out of it? What are you going to enjoy about it?
Something brief enough that it's interesting enough to keep me going to figure out like that they actually cared enough to tell a good story about Gollum.
He's gonna get the interaction with the people watching him play.
Right, that's right. I mean, chatting with people while I'm playing the whole thing, and that's about the most I'm going to get out of it.
That's fair. I mean, I'm going to get a lot of. If I play this, I'm going to get a lot of hilarious commentary from my children that are watching me play it. But that's about it. That's the most I'm going to get out of it.
I will say they massacred my man Thranduil. He looks crazy in it.
Oh,
he's got like antlers coming out of his head, and he's wearing like a dress. It's weird.
Yeah.
Mixer, what did you think of
becoming
the
woke, man?
Thranduil in
trans Thran?
It's I was going to say, agenda, man, it's everywhere.
What did you think of Thranduil in the Hobbit movies, as far as the look of him?
Oh, what's his name? He killed it. That actor. He was one of my favorite parts of I think the Hobbit films. There's a bunch of fan edits out there. If you take a bunch of stuff out, there's a good movie in there somewhere, and people did a really good job in certain spots. But it's
like a 1 hour fan edit where they took just the stuff from the books and they put them together.
It's as they say, like butter scraped over too much bread. It should have been 1 or 2 movies. Yeah. I mean, look at him.
Ooh,
look how they massacred my boy.
Yeah. He's got like a panpipe around his head.
They did the same thing with the Gandalf sword too, though. The sword is in like literally the same location for Gandalf.
Oh, what is it? Everyone you can't actually walk with it because you're banging
it
everyone the entire time.
They all stand like they're wearing corsets. I don't. This is
well. I mean, those that's a standard.
That's the model. I understand. Yeah.
Well,
Lee Pace did a great job as Thranduil.
Lee Pace.
There you go.
He was also good in that show about like the 1980s computer stuff. What was that called? Shoot, now I'm not gonna. Anyway,
he was just recently in that Apple show, sci-fi show. I forget where they race swapped everyone to. But he was like
Foundation.
Foundation. That's it. Yeah.
That's right.
Oh yeah.
He was a great.
Played Ronan too.
Halt and Catch Fire. That was a really interesting show. I like that.
I think it was Peter Jackson in an interview one time where he was like, you need somebody who looks old enough that they could have, 5,000 years of wisdom dwelling inside of them, but also young enough to show that they don't age. And I feel like Lee Pace was great for that role.
He was good.
Yeah, he played it well. All right. So before we close out, which I think we got another 15, 20 minutes to go, but I want to, who's been following this here? This guy?
Oh my goodness, dude.
I think Mixer, you have. You need to tell us about this. Tell us all about this.
Yeah, I want to hear Mixer's take on this.
So there is this lunatic who wrote a story called War of the Rings, The Fellowship of the King. And it's basically like if there was more rings of power out there that were not talked about in the rest of the story. And then I read the synopsis of it. It was like Sam's daughter, Rosie II, like goes on this adventure on behalf of King Elisar, and Aragorn's son goes with her, and they collect a bunch of.
Is he saying it's Lord of the Rings? Did he?
He's saying it's in the same universe, and okay. I don't know how he hasn't been sued into oblivion yet. But like,
well he wasn't big enough to be sued.
I guess that was it. But
I was threatened with a lawsuit from the Tolkien estate at one point for owning the domain Tolkien Online.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they did. I had it for 3 years. Once the movies were over, they were like, "Yeah, so you're not allowed to have that anymore. Give us all the money you ever made on the site." And I'm like, "We made like $700 in the last 3 years."
And they said, "We'll take it."
Yeah, they said, "We'll take it." And I was like, "Well, I can't fight this." And so anyway,
yeah.
Wait, really? They won that?
Well, I
or you don't want to get tied up?
I didn't want to get tied up.
You didn't want to go to court for $700.
I'm not going to go. Yeah, $700. You know what it was? Is we had these little pins that were our logo that resembled Tolkien's like JRR type of little logo that's on the spine of every book, and we kind of modified a little bit and made it look like TOR, and they were like, "It's too close," and I'm like, "I don't think so. I think it's actually like at least 30% different," and they didn't like us having the name Tolkien Online at the time, and so they took that domain.
They were the 800-pound.
Sorry, go ahead, Mixer. I apologize.
No, you're good. It was a great.
It was cathartic for me to finally release that into the public.
Well, it adds a lot of depth to like the situation, because that is a great example of something the Tolkien estate will do. You know, they're pretty lawsuit happy from what I've read. And this guy was just operating under the radar. And he even at one point had, I don't know how he did it, but edited in his own name as one of the authors of the Fellowship of the Ring on Amazon.
Really?
I do not know how this was done, but there was like a period of a couple months where it said, and it's he has a really difficult
is this like is he some kind of performance artist or something like that?
I don't know. He only has 200 followers on Twitter. It's just some random guy.
His real name is Demetrius Polychron.
Yes.
It sounds like something from like an Orson Scott Card Ender book.
Are you sure this isn't ChatGPT?
I love weird guys. Like it's one of my favorite things to just like find a guy who's weird and like become obsessed with them for like a month. And this is just the perfect definition of a weird guy. And I don't know how he's managed to get away with this for so long, but he literally has a book out that is an entire. There it is, right there, an entire story based off of the Middle Earth universe. It's like a sequel. And
which was hilariously on Amazon for a while, and they've now pulled it, of course. But
professional picture as well, right there. It's a great headshot.
Not only had the audacity to do this, right? This is far enough. He is now suing the Tolkien estate and Amazon, claiming that they stole scripts from his original writing that he had presented to Simon Tolkien, who Simon Tolkien apparently stole it and added it into the script of the Rings of Power. I haven't been able to.
Well, I wouldn't put that past
allegedly. Yeah. I haven't been able to find like what exactly it is that he's talking about. However, I mean, like, who does that? Like, this guy is incredible.
That's pretty awesome.
The sheer huts.
I shared it on Twitter, and I was like, "Oh, this guy's suing Amazon. Let them fight."
Yeah, that's right. It's like Gladiator. I have a feeling he's not going to stand a chance, sadly. Sadly, is that sadly? I don't know. That's maybe the worst thing.
He is riding. He is just riding the grifter wave. He is grifting king right here.
Yeah, there's no doubt there. 250 million. Is that the lawsuit?
He's got. Is it? He's got 1,500 views on his interview for the Fellowship of the King.
But okay, but just how crazy would it be though?
The Fellowship of the King.
He's obviously right. You know, so he obviously like has done this, like, doing this thing where he's writing this book that's completely based in Tolkien's universe. And of course, like, he's the one that's doing the copyright infringement and all this kind of stuff. But how crazy would it be if they had like handed over this book to Amazon and they're like, hey, this is pretty good. Let's use some of the stories that come out. Right. Even though he doesn't have a foot to stand on. Right. But it still comes out that like, actually, yeah, I guess we did kind of do that, but we still own the rights to it, so it's okay.
If there's like, emails start getting released, internal memos, and they're like, the Fellowship of the King guys, have you read this? Have you read this? I mean, it wouldn't put it past the writers. It's not like they came up with anything, better than the Fellowship of the King, since ships look up and rocks look down. Oh my gosh. Wow. We get like the crazy. I've never seen anything quite like this before. I didn't realize he got his name on the Amazon's copy of the Fellowship of the Ring or on the Lord of the Rings or something like that.
Yeah. They corrected it, I think, like as recently as last week.
Well, why would you even do that though? Like, why? Like, does he want to claim that he had some part in writing Fellowship of the Ring? What?
That's the incredible part about it, is this is a man of mystery. I need to know more.
He's either just completely nuts or he's some kind of performance artist. Like, this is all just one big, like, one epic troll, you know?
Yeah, but it's one of those things that would have to be years in the making, like was Fellowship of the King part of the troll? Did he think of this like 2 decades ago? I need to know.
If they can get him on Friday Night Tights with Nerdrotic and everybody there, that would be interesting, because boy, would he be ripped around a lot. That would be funny.
I would tune in for that. I don't know. Yeah.
Wow. Well, between guys, what is there good coming out in the world of J.R.R. Tolkien? I hope Warner Brothers does something good, because all this stuff, it's so easy to look at. And
I'm not completely black-pilled on War of the Rohirrim. I think there's a chance it might have some good stuff.
I'm in the same boat. I'm in the same boat on that.
Yeah,
it does have the.
Did anybody pick up the new? I guess it's the Fall of Numenor. The book.
Yeah.
It's that kind of a response to the Amazon stuff?
No, that was done by Amazon. They wanted
I think it was.
They did
on behalf of. Yeah.
Okay.
What were you going to say, Trent?
Yeah, just if you pull up that tweet, the executive producer for the War of the Rohirrim confirmed that there's new concept art with the giant elephants, whatever, that aren't really called elephants.
Let me bring that up.
The Mumakil.
Yeah.
Here we go. Sorry, everybody. Come on.
There it is.
We are professional.
Ah, cool. All right. Well, they're certainly Peter Jacksoning it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, they're not. We had an in-depth discussion in my house at dinner one night following the rereading of.
Can I come to your house for dinner sometime? Because those sound way more interesting than the in-depth discussions at my house.
Where my kids were talking about comparing the movie Mumakil to the way Tolkien describes them in The Two Towers, when even through the eyes of Sam as he's watching the battle with the Rangers of Ithilien and the Haradrim, and this is actually more like the size that Tolkien describes them, he describes them as distinctly larger than the animals that we have that are like them today, namely elephants, but the size of a large house or something. So, but not the size. I mean, like the Mumaks in the Peter Jackson movies are ridiculous. Circulation doesn't work on a creature that size. So,
wait a minute, are you telling me that Legolas didn't climb an elephant the size of a building?
Well, it was a
turf down the nose.
They're like 15. I don't know what they were. They were like a 10-story building instead of a house. So
everything is bigger.
Yeah.
One wonders why they didn't send them in first.
That's right.
Holding them back.
Yeah, they were just at the back. Yeah. So this is. I like this artwork. This is good. This is more the right size, and
is this concept art, or it says the first look at the anime?
Yeah, so it says that it'll be at Annecy, which is the Animation Film Festival in France. But he confirms here. So that guy, Clark Nova 1, is Jason DeMarco, who is executive producer. He's a bit, yeah, you can see right there. He's or producer.
Yeah.
He confirms that is concept art in the thread.
Okay. Man, well, I mean, it looks good. For me, I think anime is like, it doesn't ever feel as real to me as like actually doing a film or a TV show that with live action people. And so I feel like it's always second rate, like a video game. Like I don't take it as seriously, and that's my own shortcomings. I know I can deal with it, but it's just not as interesting to me as like a real world type of story. Or I know I didn't bring this up earlier, but here's all the real world stuff that we see in the Gollum game too.
Oh yeah.
I wasn't looking at the private chat enough to get the links.
Yeah.
I'm really excited because I'm not a big anime guy or anything. But I do think that animation is a great medium for a fantasy. And I think that if the right people, and admittedly, I don't know a whole lot about the people who are managing it, but I am excited at the prospect of, something that could be akin to, and I'm sure everybody in this chat will have strong opinions on it. And I don't want to rustle any feathers, but I really liked the Clone Wars. I thought it was a good show.
I've heard a lot of people say that.
And it had no business being that good. It was like a kid's cartoon, and it was
well,
pretty...
Look, my teenage daughter, who's read the Silmarillion 6 times, loves Clone Wars as well. So she's a fan.
I felt like a lot of heart and passion went into it, and I could see something like this developing in the same way.
Are these flamethrowers up here?
That's what I was thinking. Is that like Greek fire?
Yeah, right.
I think those are part of. I think they're torches on the structure.
Yeah,
it looks like it right there. Yeah, okay.
They're part of the structure of the thing.
It's dangerous. These guys, they didn't know when to stop.
They'll probably burn themselves down like the Disneyland dragon.
Oh yeah, that's right. The Disney dragon. I saw that so many times when Disneyland was still good to go to in the early 2000s, and went there and wow, that actually occurred to me the amount of times like the fire would shoot out of it and it would like the whole lake would catch on fire. And I'm like, eventually this has got to go bad.
And when the voice that is due to technical difficulties, and you hear people start to laugh.
Due to a fire, and that's
the presentation tonight.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Really?
I can't imagine being there.
So,
man, all right.
So I will push back on I think Clone Wars is okay, but what did you make of the stuff with the father, the son, and the daughter that basically changes the entire view of the Force?
I actually, I don't know if I watched that episode. I only got like 4 seasons in, but those 4 seasons I watched, I was like, this is, pretty decent for a cartoon, for a kid's show. So yeah, I don't know what
was the
philosophies they were trying to
us.
Yeah.
So there's
about that.
Yeah, there's the father. I'm not sure what season. I'd have to look it up. But the father, there's a couple episodes where Anakin basically is shown what he's going to do, and then they wipe his memory. But he interacts with these Force beings called the Father, the Son, and the Force, and it's all about kind of keeping the Force in balance. And the son is like the evil version, the daughter is like the light side.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And it changes how Lucas has explains how the Force operates.
I think
it's like suppressing like your temptations, rejecting them, and using discipline. And
yeah, I think I remember references to that. Maybe I saw a scene, but I kind of don't remember enough of like what was talked about. I just remember thinking it's been years since I've watched the show, but I just remember thinking like the value, at least for the storytelling, I'm genuinely shocked at this show. And I haven't watched Rebels, but I mean, I've heard people say similar things. However, that's a Disney production, so I hate Disney. I can't,
I think I'm just going to stick to episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and write off anything else at this point.
I will say I enjoyed watching Clone Wars and Rebels both, but for me it's quite a different experience. Star Wars is a different experience from Tolkien. Like I just have kind of learned like can't go too deep into this stuff. It just doesn't. It's totally incoherent if you try going deep into it. Like there's any, like metaphysical underpinnings that actually make sense. You just have to kind of enjoy it for the sake of the stories and not think too hard about it. That's where I land on all of it.
I completely agree with that. I'm not really thinking about Star. I mean, I know
I love Star Wars. Like Star Wars is my first love, but like I learned when midichlorians happened, I was just like, oh yeah, there's Yeah,
I hear in Demetrius Polychron's next book, The Three Flowers, he'll be talking about how there are these small blood-borne like bacteria that give elves their magic, actually. And
I mean,
we will learn all about that.
Demetrius Polychron update like needs to be a weekly thing on this live stream.
Look, if it comes out that Demetrius Polychron, I could see him lobbying over the idea of the nature of mithril and giving elves their life, their immortality. I like that whole concept from the Rings of Power was so dumb that I was like, somebody with a lot of weed came up with this. Because that's only a split. But to
talking about the mithril, did you say the
whole rewriting of how now mithril, the elves need mithril to or they start to die
stay alive.
now.
Yeah.
The origin of mithril is idiotic in the first place.
I think I laughed out loud when I watched that.
I did too. With
my wife.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
Yeah. I was just what?
I have to say to John Trent's point, I never cared that much about the Force. I am gonna rewatch that episode. I'm gonna look it up and what you're talking about, because I'm always interested in the principles behind things. But the Force was always so pantheistic that, unlike Tolkien's work, I felt no affinity for the background metaphysics of the Star Wars universe. Star Wars to me is a space opera, and it's to be enjoyed as such. And the Force was always just a vehicle for the space opera. So I'm going to have a hard time getting worked up about changing the origins of the Force.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I don't really connect with Star Wars like that. And I know a lot of people do, but I don't. I always saw it as more something like just to casually watch. I don't really think too deeply, because the Force and stuff doesn't. And granted, I was like 4 years old when the midichlorian stuff came out, so it didn't affect me in the same way that it affected you guys probably. But
no. Remember, I waited 230 hours for the Phantom Menace and learned about midichlorians, and I felt like I had to like the freaking movie.
The midichlorians were something he talked about in the 80s, though.
He did, but none of us knew that because there wasn't the internet like it was now, and it was. Yep. I mean, and then he also had Jar Jar to deal with the first.
You mean Darth?
Believe me, I expected more after waiting 230 freaking hours on the streets of Hollywood for. Yeah.
Didn't we all, man?
All right, hey, so before we close off,
we did get Duel of the Fates.
We Duel of the Fates, and it's still what I will always hold true is the best lightsaber duel in all the movies. Maybe other than the one between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan in the Obi-Wan TV show across some sort of fire junkyard.
That's
That's so bad. Anyway, hey, so I have this one thing. So at home, we're watching. We've watched with my 4 kids. We've watched The Fellowship of the Ring and The Two Towers. I'm trying to find a time to actually watch a 4-hour Return of the King. We have a big wall projector, and so we kind of do it as a movie theater, and we set it up nicely. But after watching The Two Towers, this is one thing I want to just close on, and that's. What does Faramir mean? Okay, so at the end of The Two Towers, Frodo is there about to hand the ring to the ring wraith, right? It's sitting there, and then Sam comes over and tackles him, knocks him off. The ring wraith flies away for some reason because he can't get Frodo anymore because Sam tackled him. But then Faramir says, after that, he says, "I think we finally understand each other, Mr. Frodo." I'm like, wait, what? What do you understand? Why? What are you talking about? What do you understand now? Because you almost gave the ring to the ring wraith. Now you understand each other. It's always bothered me, and I want to see if any of you have a good reason for him saying that, because it drove me bananas. And the last time I saw it, like a week and a half ago.
So that entire scene is contrary to Tolkien's vision of who Faramir is.
But I'm wondering what Peter Jackson was thinking.
I've got a fan comment. Another comment from.
Yeah,
I might have been Reddit. I think I saw this in Reddit. What was going through their mind, I think, was the question. Nothing is going through anyone's mind but the writers getting themselves out of the hash they made of the plot by taking Frodo and Sam to Osgiliath.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just a way to write yourself.
They couldn't figure out how to get Faramir to agree with it, so they're like, we're just going to make him agree. To hell with how he actually thinks.
So the true blood of Numenor supposedly, or the blood ran truer in Faramir than Boromir. And if you were to stretch it, you could say, well, maybe he had some foreknowledge or something kicked in. Faramir was able to see ends, but no, that's just.
What does he understand?
Sloppy.
What does he even?
So, Jonathan, putting myself in the mind of that, because I agree with the commenter that nothing's going through their mind except getting themselves out of and try to artificially close a second movie when because that's why that ending was written really. The way it was. But from the character as written in the movie, which I hate because Faramir's my favorite character in the Lord of the Rings, the books. The character as written in the movie is entirely driven by his daddy issues. And so what is he doing in that scene? He's taking Frodo back to his daddy so that the ring can give his ring to Denethor and he can be accepted and loved as Boromir was loved. And that's movie Faramir. And so he's being compelled by something, that is beyond what he may want in a particular moment. And so that's the only meaning that I read into it as far as I was willing to go when I looked at that scene. It was like Frodo's being compelled to give up the ring to the Nazgul. Faramir feels compelled to give up the ring to his dad.
To me, it's really the only line in all the movies that I can think of that I really just hate absolutely because I can't figure it out. What do they understand about each other?
I think it's just Sam's speech scene was so phenomenal that they got done and Peter Jackson hit cut and he was like, that was brilliant. Let's go home. And then some guy in the corner with a coffee was like, we still got to end the movie. And he was like, oh, right.
What?
Whatever. Say you guys understand each other.
That's on you.
But I think that wasn't properly communicated. Nothing's perfect.
Nobody's got a good answer. If you know the answer, put the comments somewhere below because I would really like to have a good reason for this. Generally, I hated movies when I first I didn't hate them. I disliked the movies much when I saw them, and I want to like it a little bit more. And if I understood this line, I would. But it just left such a bad taste in my mouth when I saw it. A week and a half ago for the first time in like 10 years.
See, what I'm always fascinated by now that I've got to know Jonathan a bit is the fact that he's much kinder on the Phantom Menace than he is on the in his initial reviews, like Jonathan coming out of the Phantom Menace and Jonathan coming out of the Fellowship of the Ring. You were much harsher on Fellowship of the Ring.
That's because the Phantom Menace book was much closer to the Phantom Menace movie.
Okay.
No, I don't know. I don't think Terry Brooks wrote the Phantom Menace book actually, so it probably wasn't that good, although I never read it. But yeah, no, the Phantom Menace, it is what it is. There's nothing else to compare it to. So it's bad on its own account. But the Lord of the Rings, when they ruin characters like Faramir and Aragorn and Galadriel, I couldn't, that's where it left me with a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, I think Faramir was the biggest mess up of those movies,
And
Tolkien
there's the line
said,
that's the biggest mess up. It's like, we understand each other. What? Sorry, I'm just going to keep doing that.
No, you're good.
This is very personal for Jonathan.
I think that, for a character that Tolkien himself said, if I was to plug myself into the story at all, which I'm not, but if I was, hypothetically, I would be Faramir.
Yeah.
You want to treat that character with some respect. And he was essentially just, a squishy pudding the whole time he was on film.
Ron DeSantis hand-eating
squishy pudding with daddy issues.
All right. Well,
as opposed to the one man who, without any prior knowledge or setting himself up, passed the test of the ring. He's the one man that actually passed the test of the ring in the books. Aragorn does, but Aragorn knows going into it everything about it. Faramir, it's just thrust upon them, and all of a sudden the One Ring is here calling to him, and he passes. And the fact that in the movies they had him not pass and give in to it, not completely debased instinct. He didn't try to seize it for his own, but to bring it back was to me, I was like, and I'm out.
Chance for this conversation reminds me of when you're talking, when you hear a great song and you're like, man, this song's awesome, and then somebody's like, but what do these lyrics mean right here? What? Oh man, it's like, we're thinking way too hard about these lyrics.
Okay, right? I can take a hint. Fine. I will come back. We're going to try and watch Return of the King this week with my kids, and maybe this week. So next week I'll come back with a really annoyed version. What?
You can split it into two. Like they used to do with old movies.
Where's a good place to split it into two?
Where it's
there's a natural. If you watch the extended edition, there's a natural.
Oh, that's true. That's right. Maybe we'll do that. Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, because you got to put the two discs in, right?
Oh, that's,
Exactly.
yes.
Yeah.
I have the 4K version too that I got.
My wife always slightly hopes that I'll be like, you know what? Let's watch the rest another time instead of putting the second disc in. And,
My wife is the same way.
That's so funny.
And I'm
Well,
like,
wow.
Does she stay
Look,
awake the whole time during it?
the
too?
first and second disc,
she
they're
passed
great.
out when we watched it the other day.
Bathroom break. That's what it's there for. It's like,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah.
All right, everybody.
Bathroom break, and the kids are like, "Can I get more ice cream?" Like, no.
No.
Done. I know there's another 2 hours to go, but no more. You're going to be bouncing off the walls in the next 2 hours. Anyway. All right, guys. I think we gotta pull this off. Close down the ship, land the plane. What are all the other little metaphors I can come up with in order to say we're done? So yeah, next week I hope you guys. It's all standing invitation to anybody who wants to come. I'll in our little calendar thing. I'll just add you guys persistently to it. So if you can come, make it, then we'll do it. And I'm going to try and add a couple other folks too. Austin Freeman. I know Steve. You gave me the author of Tolkien Sanctifying Myth. I'll see if I'll contact him, see if he can join too. And we'll move forward there. But I want each of you to get a chance to, tell us where to go to get more info about you. So we'll go clockwise. Steve, you're first from Glasshammer.
Glasshammer.com for all my band stuff, albums, and then StephenRBab.com for news on my book. A couple of books now.
Oh, oops.
So, I'm easy to find.
I wanted to do this. I'm trying, guys. I'm trying to run the soundboard, the video board here.
Yeah.
And then there at glasshammer.com. You see,
Yeah.
I can still make things happen. Thanks for being here, Steve. It's been a while.
Oh,
but
yeah, man.
I know you're going to be on vacation next 2 weeks, but after that.
Yeah, I'll be back.
Great to meet
Yeah.
you, Steve.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, great meeting
Enjoyed
you.
Me too.
Nice to meet you, Steve.
All right, John Trent, where should we go to?
So we have bountyandcomics.com we cover everything pop culture, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. We do video games as well. Marvel, DC. I also have a sports site called bountyandsports.com where we cover all kinds of controversies involving NBA, NHL, NASCAR, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, quick question
NFL.
then. Who had the worst pick in the NFL draft last night?
I don't know.
Oh, come on.
Sorry.
Okay, I don't either. Actually, that's why I'm asking.
I'm really stretched thin between both. I'll be honest. I mainly am only trying to cover the NASCAR stuff, motorsports stuff. That's what I really like. And then we're on YouTube here too, Bounty and Comics. So if you aren't already subscribed, please go over and hit subscribe. And we have our Black Hill stream.
I'll
Wednesdays at 9.
I'll update the description below and put links to everything because I think I failed to do that. Sorry, it's the first time. I'm still new to this whole thing, so we'll get it updated.
It's a lot of work.
Michael, where can we find you?
You can find me at theonering.com. So I do not host my own show. Jonathan puts up with me and Dan as well from the Babylon Bee.
We're all just co-hosts figuring it out.
Right. But yep, I love these discussions, and it's been a joy and a pleasure to get connected with Jonathan and to meet all of you. So I don't have I'm a boring corporate guy on the business side. So we're not going to give you websites there.
Oh, all right. Well, yeah. Maybe one day we'll you'll advertise on here for us. Anyway, all right. Mixer. I don't even know what to put up for you. I don't think you have a website. Do you have a website?
No. I'm still pretty new to the game. I want to say thank you guys so much for having me on. This has been so fun. Like I don't really get to do this that often. Not everybody in my social circle enjoys listening to, Tolkien rants and literature rants. So I really appreciate it. It's been so great talking to all of you. Right now you can find me on Apple and Spotify. I do a podcast on there. I'm trying to move to doing some video stuff on YouTube soon. Other than that, I'm pretty active on Twitter. You're probably catching me saying good morning to my followers. I think if you just search the New York Times.
If you go to like your podcast, you search for Middle Earth Mixer, you'll get that. you get the podcast, right? Like it's not like you're the third one in the list.
Yeah,
so.
You'll get like my RSS feed and then Apple.
Yeah, and remember, though Twitter doesn't allow it, Middle Earth has a dash between Middle and Earth because a lot of people get that wrong. Yes. Lowercase e on Earth too. Took me a while.
Yes, and there's just one R at the end of Mixer because I ran out of room.
Really? That's the limit on Twitter? I didn't know they had a limit.
Yeah. Oh. I was surprised. I was like, what?
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for being here. I hope to see you next week too. I know it's always harder in the Friday afternoons, and I'm surprised I even got all of us together here. So I really appreciate everybody. And John, you are saved the best for last.
Hey, thank you.
You came in last at the end.
Yeah, right on.
We'll find out. We'll leave it up to everybody else.
at tolkienroad.com. Got a lot of podcast episodes going way back, and got a YouTube channel, so go subscribe over there. Things are a little bit slow for me right now on the content world, but got a lot of backlog, so you can go check that out, and I'll have new content out here soon enough.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining. All you listeners. We'll try and do this every Friday. Every Friday. I know. I've got a day job too, so all of us, I think, are burning some daytime oil. Is that a thing?
I almost didn't make it today.
I know. So, but thanks for having you. We had, I don't know how many we had, but more than I hope. Not as many, of course, as when people were dishing on the Rings of Power back in the day. But we're going to keep it up and keep going and growing and go from there. So, thanks everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for putting this together, John. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.